So a couple of housekeeping details you already know. Turn off your cell phones. We don't want to hear them. If you would like to use the facilities, go out in the store here to the right, your bathrooms. There's also a table here with Ruggles Center information. Please check it out, take a brochure, sign up for our email list. And you already saw that Broadside, Kinky Broadside is selling many of Nell's books, or a few, many. So briefly, what does the DRC do? DRC, David Ruggles Center, and why Commerce Day? So the DRC, some of you may know, is a volunteer-run organization that interprets the rich history of abolitionists and reformers, both black and white, here in 1800s Florence, or what is now called Florence. We give walking tours, we host school groups, we have a museum down the hill, which is open Sunday afternoons. Also will be open for Juneteenth, Wednesday, June 19, from 12 to 4, so come on over. Our museum also houses historical archives and reading room, library, and just visit our website because there's a lot of rich history on the website, and you can also use it to inquire about volunteering, or if you want to set up a walking tour, the tour guides are here waiting for you. Yes. And of course, come to the museum, which we are in the process of redesigning thanks to an ARPA grant from the city of Northampton, and thanks to our terrific exhibits designer, Michael Hankey, who I believe is here. Michael, is he hiding? Well, he's here. And if you come down to our reception afterwards, hopefully you'll get to meet Michael. And you'll be hearing from us in the future about fundraising for this very exciting redesign project. Now, Founders Day commemorates the founding of the Northampton Association of Education and Industry on April 8th, or a few months late, of 1842, when a small group of families came here and drafted a constitution which marked the beginning of a community based on radical equality. Equality of race, gender, class, and religion. Sounds radical, huh? Today. So our work commemorates this community who came here to challenge slavery and to live in freedom. And this was the community that attracted Black abolitionist David Ruggles, as well as Sojourner Truth to live here, and also visitors such as Frederick Douglass and William Lloyd Garrison. We could have heard them, and so many others, speaking behind Bombyx in the Pine Grove, which was the public meeting space. Florence also attracted other Black freedom seekers who were passing through on an Underground Railway or who decided to settle here. And again, I have to call out someone else here, Christopher Clark, who wrote the definitive history of the Northampton Association, The Communitarian Moment. So you have a reading list after today. You have to read, we just keep talking, and a few other her titles you have to read, The Communitarian Moment, just to name a few. So today we also commemorate the founding of the David Ruggles Center for History and Education on April 8th, 2008, 166 years after the association. And as our mission states, we seek to educate and inspire our visitors to possibilities in the present by sharing these powerful voices from the past. And I know that this is also the work that Lisa and Nell have engaged in throughout their careers. So after the event, please buy more books, check out our information, but you're all invited to come down to the Ruggles Center. It's really just down the hill, but you have to take a right and a right and a right to get to 225 Nameltech Street. We'll have it with refreshments, reception, so we hope you can come and join us. So I'm going to invite Ousmane Power-Greene to come up, professor at Clark University, to come up and introduce our speakers. And after they talk, we'll have some time for questions and answers and for you to enter into the conversation as well. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I am Ousmane Power-Greene, a Ruggles, a fellow Ruggler, and professor at Clark University History, and I'm honored to introduce these two fantastic people and very influential people to all of you. I know some of you know them well. I want to begin by with, and last year, almost a year ago exactly, really July, I had the honor to be on a panel at the Society of American Early Historians conference in Philadelphia. And I was really nervous. This is my first invited panel. I was like with these really big head historians. Oh my gosh, why am I on this panel? And so I was writing my notes. And I was really reflecting on my sort of intellectual journey here, thinking about being a historian, also studying this era. And I thought about my encounter with Exodusters, which I think is here. Is Exodusters in the back? Professor Painter's first books, which was a major work for my intellectual trajectory in the last 20 years, looking at Black exodus from the South to Liberia in the case of my scholarly work. And so I was working on this in the hotel. I was rushing. I got out, ran down the block, sweating. I entered the building, and guess who's standing at the door? Dr. Painter. No, not Obama. More importantly, Dr. Painter. And so I'm about to rush the elevator. I stopped. And I was like, this is like fate, right? This is literally like fate. First invited, opportunity to talk, and standing there waiting for a car at this conference is the person that for me began this intellectual journey. And so I stopped and I went over and I had to do it. I said, Professor Painter made Lisa Baskin's parties, this, that, and the third, etc. And she was so gracious with her time, and I really, really appreciate it. So when I was invited by my colleagues here at the Ruggles Center to introduce Lisa and Professor Painter, of course, obviously I was honored, and I wanted to tell you all that to help you understand why this is such a big moment for me. We are, as a group, obviously ecstatic to be able to have Professor Painter here in conversation with Lisa Baskin, who, by the way, when you spend more time with her, you learn more of the extraordinary things that she's done in her life and career. And each time I learn something new, I am obviously blown away. So let me introduce you to Lisa Baskin first. She is a historian, curator, editor, political activist, and an intense collector for the past 50 years. She most voraciously acquired books, manuscripts, ephemera, objects, and photographs documenting women and work. In 2015, the collection was acquired by the David and Rubenstein Library at Duke University. On the cusp of the pandemic, Lisa Baskin curated 500 years of women's work at both Duke and the Gerould Club. Is that you pronounce it? Gerould Club? At the Movies. She continues to build her collection and community through her activism. As I mentioned, she serves as Ken mentioned, she serves on the board of the David Ruggles Center for History and Education in Florence, Mass. She is an active member of the Gerould Club and the American Antiquarian Society. She has taught at the Colorado, Minnesota Aquarian Books Seminar, where she established the Belle de Costa Green and the David Ruggles Scholarships. She currently serves on the advisory committee for the forthcoming Bella da Costa Green exhibition at the Morgan Library and Museum. Co-chair of the Western Massachusetts Rainbow Coalition, she was elected a Jesse Jackson delegate to the 1980 Democratic National Convention. Yeah, I think so. But that career dedicated to the cause and women's causes of the world. Next to Lisa is Dr. Nell Irvin Painter, Edwards Professor of American History, Emeritus at Princeton University, and is a leading historian of the United States. She is the author of 9 books, including what we're talking about today, perhaps, mostly. I Just Keep Talking, A Life in Essays. Also, Old in Art School, a memoir of starting over, published in 2018. The History of White People, published in 2010. Creating Black Americans, African American History and Its Meanings, 1619 to the Present in 2005. And Southern History Across the Color Line in 2002. Securing Truth, A Life and Symbol in 1987. Standing Armageddon, the United States, 1877 to 1919, which was published in 1989. and the narrative of Hosea Hudson, his life as a Negro communist in the South, 1979, and Exodus, Black migration to Kansas after Reconstruction in 1976. After earning a PhD in history from Harvard University, Dr. Painter taught at the University of Pennsylvania, the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, my alma mater, go Tar Heels, and at Princeton University. She has received honorary degrees from Yale, Wesleyan, University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and Dartmouth. Dr. Painter has served as an officer on many different professional organizations, including the American Historical Association, the Organization of American Historians, the American Antiquarian Society, the Association for the Study of Afro-American Life and History, the Southern Historical Association, the Association of Black Women Historians. She is a fellow of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences since 2007. After her retirement from Princeton in 2005, she earned a BFA in art from Mason Gross School of the Arts at Rutgers University and an MFA in painting from Rhode Island School of Design. Like, that's what RISD stands for? Exactly. Yeah. She has made artist looks in residencies such as McDowell, Yaddo, UCross, and Boliasco. She currently serves as Madam Chairman of McDowell. Yeah. That's basically it. I was just going to say, we are absolutely, and we see why now, if you don't know these two people, honored to be able to spend time with them. And so without further ado, I introduce you Lisa Baskin and Dr. Nell Irvin.
Hello.
Hello.
Yep, that's excellent a lot. Look.
First of all, I would like to say that I'm having some difficulty hearing, and I hope that it doesn't intrude on our conversation too much. I have an appointment. Not until July 3rd. To update my hearing aids.
I think we understand.
You're right that yours is a blackness of community, of solidarity. Can we speak to that a little bit?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you, Lisa. Lisa has done such a marvelous job in pulling together where we can see that the artifacts of working with it over to anyway, sometimes, yeah. And she's given a special attention to the artifacts of Black women, which is really important because you know how difficult it is to recuperate women's lives and women's experiences, and it's doubly difficult to recuperate the lives and experiences of Black women. So she's been doing this work for a long time, and I'm so pleased that it's housed in a place where we can reach it at Duke University in the library, which is where my archive is too. Yes, so we're side by side at the library at Duke University. So thanks also to Henry, to Ousmane, and to all of you. I mean, this is a wonderful crowd of people. Thank you. Thank you very much. Lisa asked about my Blackness. And when she quoted my own words, she spoke about solidarity. And I think that for me, one of the very best things about Blackness is that sense of solidarity. We often hear, oh, Americans are individualists. This is not true. I think it's fair to say this is not truth and black and it does types. And I think that's a good thing in the sense that it does give us a sense of solidarity beyond our own little selves and our own little families and our own saints, to feel that what we do and what we say and what we read has a larger meaning. I think that's a good thing. I was also speaking against a narrative that I do not agree with, which is Afro-pessimism. And Afro-pessimism, as said beautifully, eloquently, especially by two wonderful writers, Saidiya Hartman and Christina Shaw, they are fantastic writers. And this is part of the reason I think that their vision has been so persuasive. But what it says is that the United States, from its beginning to its closing time, always and forever, is basically fundamentally anti-black. Now, I agree with some of that, but I don't agree with all of that, because A, I am old enough to have lived through a lot of American history now, so I know that it has changed. And secondly, the historian in me and the historians that I hang around with are doing new things and finding new embodiments of Black people in the United States now and in the past. Part of the Afro-pessimist line is that the archetype, this is their only worry, is anti-Black, has never served Black people, and so we must turn to other means. And the other means are what I'd call creative nonfiction. I didn't make that term up. Creative nonfiction is what I write, actually. But it's creative in the sense that it selects, not that it makes up. And the part that goes too far for me, for Afro-pessimism, says that we can make up a history because the archive has failed us. I say, when you make things up, you are an artist. You are not a historian. Art has a wonderful role to play in stimulating how we think about the past, the present, the world around us, and inventing, finding means. Art has a crucial work to play in our culture. It is not the same thing as history.
Not by any but I hope to have images.
Yeah, you're seeing images from inside the book. I can't see them. You can see what they are. And if you have a question about one of them, I can turn around and hide.
What I was going to say is another quote from you, the harrowing, and I would suggest that people read and acquire Nell's new book, because it is terrific, and it deals with so many aspects. It deals with the incidents in the life of the slave girl, but it also deals with people like Henry Garner, and yes, no, I love this, and I love that all of your work is interspersed with the essays.
Yeah. And so let me just tell people that there are several sections to this book.
Yeah.
So there's one section that's history, and a related section that's Southern history. There's whiteness. I started when I was organizing, I started with the section on women, but I do use that section because women are throughout. So there's not a section, it's called women. there's a section called, what's it about? The last part is visual culture, and the part I'm missing is it's biography and all. Yeah.
And what is so compelling, I think, to me as the reader is you're dealing with Toni Morrison in a completely new and enlightened way. And I think that she was a very, I'm just going to quote, the harrowing of Black experience, as Toni Morrison writes, the response to slavery, and there is nothing that comes close to her warnings about the experience of incarcerated, of enslaved people.
And that's a good example of what art can do. But Toni Morrison never said she was writing history. No, Toni Morrison, I'll tell you what my Toni Morrison story. As Ousmane mentioned, my second job after Penn was at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. And Chapel Hill was a very nice place to live, very comfortable, except in the summer I had to get away. But I felt it was too nice, and I felt myself kind of getting rusty, because there weren't people pushing me around, intellectuals, which I loved. So it came time to leave. And I had two job offers, one from Johns Hopkins and one from Princeton. And as somebody who took my writing very seriously, more seriously than my teaching, I thought, well, I'm going to go to Johns Hopkins because I could concentrate on my writing. Whereas Princeton is an Ivy League place, you spend a lot of your time taking care of students. Teach. And Princeton is a teaching institution. And I learned to appreciate that even more when I was in art school, which is not a teaching institution. So I accepted the job from Hopkins, and I got a phone call. Now, Andrew, this is Toni Morrison. She said, I will be, maybe you're going to give her this thing. I will be personally devastated if you do not come to Princeton. I want you to Princeton.
And you're writing about Morrison and about Bullitt and about enslaved people in this country.
Yeah.
Is pink, and she understands.
Yeah. I also made 4 small pieces of art for that essay, and I think only one of them is in the book.
He's fine.
Yeah.
Is it in the attachment?
It would be, yes. Like the image, Elisa has been listening to the audiobook, which I narrate, so she's getting me all sorts of ways. But if you have the audiobook, you get a file along with it, an image file, maybe as a PDF, I suppose. And so you can go back and forth and see the images.
I think there is a PDF.
Yeah.
Accompanies.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it has all the images. And the fact that you went back to school as an accomplished historian and went as an undergraduate and did a degree at Rutgers and then went to RISD, and it is just a knockout to me.
I'll let you have enough to do. If I had done that, undergraduate was fine because the kids, they're like 19, 20 years old. They're so self-absorbed. And I learned from them. I learned self-absorption about really, that is such a gift of youth. And then also, everything was so devastating. Everything was happening for the first time today, and the world was ending, and it was something to watch. The world was ending, the world was starting, the greatest life was the greatest time, like, just everything. That was really interesting. The kids were fine with it. And I was at Rutgers, a big university. They were used to women faculty, so they were fine with it. When I went to the Rhode Island School of Design, an art school, not a university, I was nobody. I was absolutely nobody. And I was an old lady, though. I mean, it was less important, I think, that I was a black old lady. Nobody. The important thing was that I was an old lady. Therefore, nobody. And I have to say that getting an MFA in painting at RISD was infinitely harder than getting a PhD in history at Harvard. This idea is, you really read and what, you're asking me to elaborate on it? Okay, I will elaborate. And if anybody has a copy of Golden Art School, they will find what I'm about to tell you at the very beginning of the book. So, how many of you read the New York Times book review? Okay, a lot of you. You know that if you get a review on the front page of the New York Times book review in 2010, when the book review is still book review, is a very big deal.
Receive it.
So I got a front page review in the New York Times book review. This was nothing for most of the people I hung around with at the Rhode Island School of Design at Baskin, because they didn't read the book review, they didn't care about history, they didn't care about Ars Nova2. However, I had a teacher in printmaking who understood, and she was taking me from the top floor of Benson Hall down to the bottom floor to tell her friend about this great coup. So coming down, I ran into Henry, and Henry was the teacher who had taught me. I was not at the printmaker because I didn't know what I was doing. But I tried really hard, and I made a lot of work. And I think that's part of the strength of being old, that you know that doing a lot, doing your work will pay off, and you will get better, and you will enjoy it while you're getting it. So Henry had told me, dogging, so he's giving me like an A minus.
Yes, yes.
So we come down, and I'm about to tell the friend about this marvelous thing that has happened to me. And Henry is standing there, and I don't know how, I got pulled off. Somehow I got involved with Henry. And Henry said, you may sell your work, you may have collectors, you may have a gallery, you may have your work in museums, but you will never be an artist. You won't. And I knew enough. This is where old lady smarts come in. I know enough to say, Henry, that is bullshit. However, I feared that Henry was running. Because that's what art school does. And that's what teaching in art school is like. And I was a mess. If you know Golden Art School, I was honest about being a terrible mess. What saved me was that I had women friends at Yale. And I drove my little Volkswagen, diesel Volkswagen down to Miriam, and they looked at my stuff and they said, this is fine, just keep doing more, which is what good teachers would say. So I went back and I just made a whole lot more work. But I never forgot.
Can you address the absolute neglect of especially Black women artists?
I can. I just keep talking.
Yes.
There is not an absolute neglect of Black women artists. Young Black women artists, and here young is anybody under 60, under 50, under 40. Younger Black women artists are more likely to get their due, to be known, to be collected, to sell their work, to be respected as artists, and much more likely. Where the loss occurs is a 20th century artist, like one of my favorite artists, Martha Humphrey. We actually are both from Oakland, and we took drawing classes together at the California College of Arts and Crafts. She stayed in art, I didn't, and she became a marvelous printmaker called I collect. But, you know, she's an old lady like we are now, and she finally got a show in New York, but she finally had a monograph published about her work. But 20th century Black women artists, and Faith Ringgold as a phenomenon may help redress. But she had to live into the 90s to get hurt.
Yes, it took a long time.
Yeah.
But somebody like Alma Thomas.
Elma Thomas is getting her due now. She has been dead for 40 years. Yeah. So if you want to be a Black woman artist and be famous, 20th century Black woman artist and be famous, die. Is somebody saying, but.
I saw an Alma Thomas painting at the National Air and Space Museum in the 1970s. So she's got consult, you know, probably she was there then, but
No, she wasn't dead then. I don't believe her, which you don't. It's in the book. It's in the book, because I put all the dates in the book. But Elma Thomas was extraordinary in that she did have a show in a little room in the basement, but with me, by, you know, her own stuff, in like 72 or so. It's really early.
yeah.
But she is one of the people who we know now. One of her essays is the essay that I contributed to the Alma Thomas catalog.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. So she became unusually famous for a Black woman artist in the 20th century. But someone who she knew, Howard, Lois Lane Jones, very well known in Black art circles, but not well known. And I don't think she's even well known now outside of Black artist circles. But so Jones's career is much more like what you're talking about of loss. She will be recuperated, but she has been dead probably for 50 years or more. So that's why I say die. But one of the things I learned is that there are more wonderful artists making fantastic work than we have bandwidth to understand. And it's the market that makes the big difference. And this is why art school was so hard for me as opposed to the the history profession where we have peer review. I mean, peer review is not perfect, but at least something exists that is outside the market for valuing work. And as far as I can see, this does not exist.
At least in the social, I think one of the, it is the significant thing. And the exposure to one's peers doesn't really happen. Demonstrated.
It depends on who your peers are. And it helps to be young, white, thin, and wear tight clothes. Small, white, and thin, and wear tight clothes. And wear tight clothes. As I said, too late for me.
I did think that.
Question? Sure.
Do we want to open for people to ask questions?
These people have questions.
What's in that?
So if you would like to ask a question and just enter into the conversation, we've got a mic to pass around here. And feel free.
And please use the mic.
Yes.
Is this?
Yes.
Festival.
Is it on?
Yes.
Here we go.
Hi,
Hello.
I'm sure by now that maybe a rigger you've seen our Sunshine and Truth across the street.
I have.
What do you think the use and meaning is of such images? I mean, it took us a long time to find that one, but there she is. And how do you think about the way we use them and how they can be of use?
Yeah, there's a whole field of study about the use of Bombyx, particular. Now, when I published my first Seducing the Truth book in '96, Seducing the Truth, A Life, a Symbol, and you may have the second edition of his, right? That's the first edition. That's the first edition. The second edition is new, just this year. So you have the second edition of Seducing the Truth, third edition of Standing on it, and republished with this new one. Yeah. So when I published Seducing the Truth, The Life, a Symbol in 1986, there were no monuments to Seducing the Truth. The first ones came up in Battle Creek, Michigan, and Sacramento, California. The one in California is by Elizabeth Kaplan. Wow, by Elizabeth Kaplan.
Good.
Yeah, and there's a story there.
Do you all know who Elizabeth Kaplan?
They know. You don't know? I thought it was so smart. Elizabeth Kaplan is one of the great, this makes your point. Elizabeth Kaplan is one of the great Black women artists, modernists, 20th century. Though she died in 2011 or 12, around in there. She's one of the artists I grew up with her husband, Charles White, her then husband, one time husband. But Elizabeth Kaplan was my father's favorite artist. And she lived in Mexico for much of her career. And he actually went to Mexico, to her studio, and brought back his signed print. So she was a marvelous figurative sculptor, painter. She was politically engaged, and she made marvelous work probably from the 40s, 50s into the end of her life. And she's very well known for her Black Power art. So look up Elizabeth Kaplan as soon as you go. In fact, you can whip out your phone right here. Yeah, you found her. Yeah, good. Yeah, so Elizabeth Kaplan, very important. Wait a minute, I'm not done with the sculptures. So the statue started, and this process here in Northampton started very early. And I gather it encountered some issue. Yes, with this. But you have it. And the people who do the scholarship on statues in public life say that, one, they're important to personify, to embody what we think of as our best virtues, our civic virtues, right? And if you're there, it says, Lisa Baskin was an important person here in Washington, D.C., in the United States in general, and what she did, making the material artifacts of working women's culture, is important to us. That's the good part. And why it makes a difference if we don't have such statues for people like Cecilia Truth. The other part, though, is that once the statues are in place, they become normalized. We just walk by. So both things can happen. And one way to minimize with the, oh, we just walk by and we don't pay attention, is to bring people to look at it and engage with it, which I gather you do. Yes. Yeah.
And Cedric Truth, lived on Park Street in Florence for 14 years.
No. In a house she owned.
You publish that.
Thank you very much.
Hello. So you and I were both born in 1942. And I've noticed as I've aged that I've learned a few things. And here's my perspective has altered. And I was wondering, how have you changed? When you look back now from 81 years old, wasn't it was a different for you now than, say, when you were 50?
No. When I was 50, I was married to my second husband, to whom I am still married. That's a good thing. So the fundamental hasn't changed. But I lived in Princeton, New Jersey. And in 2002, we moved to Newark, New Jersey. So one big change, and I'll stop with this, is that when we lived in Princeton, Princeton is in the North and in the United States. But Newark is in New Jersey.
I'm not going to do that.
That's what don't crib up. One state, but not. I gained a state. A marvelous state. And if there's something that sort of on the side of my memoir over in art school, it's my cherishing of New Jersey. I like New Jersey. I'm there. I'm a proud New Jersey.
Oh, we got questions over here.
Bye.
Thank you very much. I'm a first-time person who I had no idea who you were. Happened to be in my car, driving me. I heard you on 413. And then I did the email. My friend is inviting you to help. But so I just spent outside, and I didn't have all these books.
Yeah.
But then you told me that you made your own socks. I find that more impressive than your book.
Things to put. I do review by on socks, and
Yes, sir.
There's nice.
I'm working on a new book on Center Your Truth called Sojourner Truth was a New Yorker, and she didn't say that. Which will include a section on Sojourner Truth's knitter. So more to come.
Hello.
Yes. Yeah.
Super excited to be here. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm Sarah Patterson. I'm really interested in hearing you maybe share some of your ideas about where utopia fits in modern nature. So we might some wonderful history of utopian thought stemming from the Northampton Association of Educational Industry. You already know that before Sojourner Truth was a part of that utopian community. We're also in her 1875 edition of our biography. She talked a lot about westward expansion as an opportunity for a settlement specifically for Black people, right? There are a lot of Black people in the 1870s or 1880s who are saying, why keep me upstate, right? Why don't you let us be our own governor?
No, they were saying, we got to get out of here.
They were saying, So my question is there a vision for utopia? Is it through reparations? Is it through sort of reestablishment of affirmative action? Where is the future of utopia, would you say? Because you said you don't altogether agree with Afro-pessimism, which I appreciate. So I think that utopia is on the far polar side. But is there room for utopia in the 21st century in the age of Trump running for second?
Good question. Thank you. I think one of the hardest parts about living in the United States now as a person with progressive ethics is that if you concentrate on the national level, you quickly fall into doom. That's a doom loop, practically. So when I answer your question, I would say yes, but on the local level. And so for reparations, I do not see reparations becoming a helpful national issue because the national electorate is too anti-Black. The national electorate is hard on women and hard on people of color.
Yes.
And would probably demagogue to death any positive approach to reparations on a national level. But I see, reading the papers, that on the local level, that various means of supplying reparations have not only been planned, but also implemented. So in some places, like Paterson, New Jersey, it's a universal basic income. It's not a lot of money. It's like maybe $200 or $400 a month. But it's not race specific. But it helps poor people. A disproportionate number of them are Black and brown people. So I support a basic income in that way. And there are many other ways dealing with help in getting mortgages or finding affordable housing. There are lots and lots of ways, but I would just end by stressing that I think there can be utopias and there can be remedies on the local level.
I was joking that I get to be overrun. And I realized that this one is actually that is my music.
Already gone. Not to carry on too much of the commitment that we go times the budget. I'm trying to remain out in the sit. And I wonder if you could reflect back on the scope of history you studied and comment on what I would call sort of the denialism that we experience now, right? That is talking about things as if they never happened. And I wonder if we should take any comfort in looking at the scope of history that denialism kind of went away. We can you look forward to that?
This is for your question, and I would not use denialism. I would use rank ignorance. And the ignorance varies from place to place. You're going to hear me say something I said to you the other day. In February, I was in New England. I was one of two of my fellow graduate students who are now at Yale. And we were with a group of people who support children, school children in New Haven, and sort of give them material support, moral support, the kinds of things they need that they can't get in their school or in their neighborhood. And this is one of those local answers that make me so happy, actually. But one of the people, the questions, he said, "What are you going to do about all the book bans?" And he was wringing his hands, as we do, about the book bans. But he was really wringing his hands. I mean, I deplore book bans, but I don't spend a lot of time with it because I don't live in a book ban state. So he said, "What are we going to do?" And I said, "Well, don't worry about it because you're just using up your stomach lining." But if you really want to do something about it, move to Florida and run for the local school board because that's where those policies are made. So once again, look on the local level and you will discover many wonderful initiatives, and the Ruggles Center is just one right here.
Hello. Activism is key to making change. And school board running is absolutely critical. As it is here.
Yes.
What's happening at
I have a mic, so we're going down there. We'll get it back to you. I'm Andrea Hairston. I'm an Afrofuturist, not an Afro-pessimist. And what my goal as a writer, is all right, is to get the ancestors' icons to the future. So I'd love to hear from the stories, the things that we have learned in history that will help us right now in these difficult times, because it's always difficult. So ancestors probably have something to say about our, current conditioning, like what you just suggested, like, local things. So what other things you as a historian say we need to have to talk to the future and to make the future we want?
I don't have the answer for you because I don't live here. The answer for you is here. And actually, I'm not all that great on ancestors either. But there are a lot of ancestors. And not all of them are people who are on our side. So anyway, ancestors for you, not for me.
I didn't need God, no, there are ancestors. There are things from history that we can think about. So I'm thinking in shoes and I'm having that all of you were great. I was something in the truth and not young.
It's okay. And you didn't have her say, "Aren't I retired?"
Oh, I read it, Bob.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. So yes, here, right here.
I wonder if you could talk a little bit about your art, some of the slides that we're seeing. It seems like you incorporated history into the art that you're doing right now. I wonder if you could just talk about.
Sure, yeah. When I was in art school, my teachers would slap my hand about using history or using text. So I graduated from RISD in 2011, and in a very bumpy way, it took me about 10 years to feel comfortable doing the kind of pieces you're seeing here that use a lot of writing. So that was something that I came back around to. But I think it was probably useful for me to have to come back around, because one of my teachers said to me, the important thing in art is visual meaning. It's not about discursive meaning. I mean, many Black artists, many feminist artists would say, no, it is about discursive meaning because that's the political meaning as well. But I say, if you want to know my politics, read my essays. My art is for the eye. But I also would love for it to encourage you to think in questions that history cannot immediately answer. One of the things that Lisa's collection shows is that women have been publishing the kinds of sentiments that nourish us politically and ethically for centuries. Mm-hmm. Women have been doing this work. And we need to understand that it's a job and a preparation, not of, well, the word is weight worked. That's the Afro-pessimist word for it. As if there were nothing there before. But we have a fantastic collection somewhere in some places of work that women and Black people have been doing for centuries. Luckily now, the market, often thanks to Lisa, the market for these materials has made these materials more easily accessible to us in a way that we couldn't have before.
Hi. It's weird to hear. Sorry. So I'm wondering, you're stressing the importance, you're stressing the importance of solidarity and implementing solidarity, how crucial that is. And something that I've understood solidarity to be dependent on is marginalization in the communities that I've known. I don't think that's necessarily true. It's probably my skewed understanding. However, I'm wondering how you would suggest implementing like solidarity into whiteness and how that can be possible.
Yeah, whiteness doesn't want to be solidarity. Whiteness wants to be individualism. Whiteness with a capital W. One of my essays says capitalize the W in whiteness. Our racial ideologies say that whiteness is about individuality, not about solidarity. So you have to go around and talk to white people. You, not me.
So what is this weird?
Hello,
Dr. Painter. I don't think I'm alone in really loving listening to you, and feeling so happy to have someone with such prestigious academic qualifications and such visual power to be combining those things in such an accessible form. I think many of us want to jump up and ask you questions because you're just that kind of person. I want to ask you about this sort of melding of your two disciplines. I grew up with artists. I'm an art historian by training. I taught at RISD. I wish I'd been there when you were there. Tell me I'm curious to know about the things that you were looking at to help you determine whether you were going to write or whether you were going to make something visuals.
Yeah, thank you. The first thing was when I was a kid, I loved to draw. My father taught me to draw. I drew a lot. But I didn't stay in that side because we didn't know any artists. my family is an academic family. My grandfather was a college professor. So, you know, that was the easy, I was a good writer, and people patted me on the head for it. So, you know, I stayed there. Sojourner Truth, who didn't read it right, challenged me. So it was my first step into the visual, it was into her photographs. And it was out of frustration for the limitations of the written word, the text limitations. Text failed me. So I went over to the art history library, fantastic art history library at Princeton, and I spent a lot of time there learning the rhetoric of the image, which I loved. And I thought, well, I'm going to spend some more time with it. And it was Sojourner Truth who took me over to the other side. I find that I can't do both at the same time. So I've been spending the last couple of years with this book, and I'll make, you know, just a little bit of art. I made, when I was at Art Ousmane in Gate, New York, no, it was at Headlands in Moreno County, California. I made some little 6x6-inch watercolors, but, you know, that's not much art. And I haven't made much art. So I need to finish. Sojourner Truth was a New Yorker, and she didn't say that, which will, like this, have images, my drawings as well. And this fall, I'm going to be a Berlin Prize Fellow at the American Academy in Berlin, and working on an autobiographical project about living outside the United States. So if I'm at all sane, it's thanks to getting out. So I'll be writing about that and also making some drawings. And then I'm going to commit myself 100% to visual art.
What is that?
Hello,
Where are you?
back here.
Stand up. Oh, yes. Okay, let's see.
My first question was, what initially attracted you to Sojourner Truth? Might seem obvious, but in your words. And now you're doing a lot of research and image and art about her. How does she, I guess first, but how does she come through to you now, personally?
Sure. I was drawn, my books start with questions, not with answers. So I started working on Sojourner Truth in the early 90s. And at that point, I would often see photographs of Sojourner Truth on the doors of women's studies. And so there was Sojourner Truth as she sat for her photographs with her knitting and a book and the photograph of her grandson who was in the Union Army. And she's very composed. But the words attached to her, you know, this Black Power behemoth kind of. I said, how did these go together? That was where I started. How does, and the book is an answer. Okay, so that was in the 90s. That book came out in 1996. And it was Sojourner Truth of Life Assembled. So I already knew that what we make of Sojourner Truth in our public life is not the same as the life Sojourner Truth lived in particular places, in particular times. If I have a flag as a writer, it's about specificity. You're not going to hear me say, this is what Black people do. This is what Black people are. That is how Black people talk. This is what Black... No, I don't do that. I do not generalize. I'll tell you what Sojourner Truth is said to have said. So historical specificity. Since the 90s, Sojourner Truth has become so much more present in our public lives. So probably when we all were in school And we never learned about Sojourner Truth. If you learned about Sojourner Truth, it was at home or it was with your communist friends. So, I left you and so. She is now a person who's recognized. If you say Sojourner Truth, most Americans will know she's an important person in American history. They may attach to her a phrase she did not say, but they know of her. So I could do more now about the specifics of Sojourner Truth's life than I could. But also, and I'll stop here, the writing of nonfiction has changed since the 90s, and there's much more flexibility. So, for instance, this book has all these images. The book that I did before that, Olden Art School, also has a lot of images in it. So Olden Art School was published by an independent publisher in Berkeley, California, Counterpoint. And they were able to publish a book that has art throughout, not just in insert, not just black and white, but in color. So when I contracted this book, I said to my editor at Doubleday, I want images throughout. And they said, oh, no, we can't do that. The book will cost $40. No, it'll be prohibited. No, we can't do it. They said, well, if Counterpoint could do it, ask your graphics people. So the graphics have improved in the last 10 or so years to the point that you can get a book that has a lot of images throughout, full color, and it doesn't cost $40. So when it came time to contract, Sojourner Truth was a New Yorker, and she didn't say that. I said, I want to put my images throughout, and my editor at Penguin Random House said, oh, no, we can't do that. And the costume is $40, nobody will buy it. None, they can't do that. Once again, ask your graphics people. They asked the graphics people came back and said, yes, we can do it. And you will notice this book is very heavy because it has high quality paper, coated paper, so you can see those images. So publishing has changed, Sojourner Truth has changed, and what I can do with her has changed. So you all were very nice when I said I'm going to write about Sojourner Truth's knitting, and you said, oh yeah, that's really good. But if I had said that 15 years ago,
Hi, I'm more of a comment, I suppose. Going back to your comment regarding school boards and going to Florida, I just wanted to say that Florida is actually here in Massachusetts in the form of Providence Christian Academy, Liberty Council, and the effective curriculum. If you do not know, one should not pay your jaws. No, I do. So you do know Liberty Council for sure, and backup curriculum and such. Yeah. It's basically religious nationalism is involved with our school boards. So please, here in Massachusetts, you can go to Florida. Please get involved with your school boards. If you want a book that is really good, Captain Stewart, the Power Worshippers, talks about it. And it's a really exciting thing because they're very organized, they know what they're doing, and that is really the front in terms of getting involved. So please get involved with your local history boards.
absolutely,
What's it like?
How much time do we have?
should we take this couple more questions? If you have a couple, they may be asked out.
So one questions that I could. I was wondering. I read your Sojourner Truth biography, and so her original language was Dutch, and she was from rural New York. So she was from the Hudson Valley. Yes, I imagine that sort of Midwestern, Western New York accent. No, or the Hudson Valley. Oh, okay, so closer. But
but certainly not the whatever their translation from white Alice women who wrote her stuff down. Didn't seem to have some southern idea about language. I don't know about the language she should have spoken. I imagine this sort of Dutch accent with me. I don't know, what did you sound like?
Yes, I don't know how she sounded because we don't have recordings of her.
Right.
What is important for me, though, is that the little slogan, "Aren't I a woman or ain't I a woman," has compressed and flattened out what we can know of Sojourner Truth. So I think most people know the name Sojourner Truth. Many of them know "Aren't or ain't I a woman," and they know that she was enslaved. Therefore, she becomes a Southerner. And what I am recuperating with Sojourner Truth was a New Yorker is that Sojourner Truth was a New Yorker. And she didn't say that, you understand, yeah. But what Sojourner Truth being a New Yorker does for me, I'll just tell you two things. One is that she knew how to use the law. There were laws in New York State that allowed her to get her son back when he was illegally sold into perpetual slavery. The laws were there in New York State. She was probably one in a million to be able to have the support because she was a working class woman. She was a Black woman. She had been enslaved. She was a powerless woman, and she worked for some of the members of the very family that had sold her son. So she had a lot going against her, but she had the law on her side. So that's one thing. The other thing is that Sojourner Truth dictated right here her autobiography to Oliver Gilbert, who had been in the Northampton Association, and she published it. She was a self-published author. She was one of hundreds of self-published Black authors before the Civil War. And thanks to your work and thanks to the American Antiquarian Society, we now have access to that. And it changes the way you can think about 19th century Americans who were Black and who published their own books. So instead of thinking about Black Americans in the 19th century solely as people enslaved in the South, we need to add hundreds of authors, self-published authors, and readers. We need to understand that it's not just the Southern story, and it's not just a story of people deprived of access to writing, publishing, and reading.
And one of the issues, of course, is Harriet Beecher Stowe's Within Civil. Do you all know that? Harriet Beecher Stowe, who was the single best-selling author, who wrote, as you know, Uncle Tom's Cabin, but she put an article in the Atlantic Monthly, and it was called Libyan Civil, and it was full of nonsense. I think misinformation. Yes.
Yeah, now Lisa and I don't agree on the importance of that essay. So Lisa is telling you about what was in it, which I just summarized as nonsense. So Harriet Beecher Stowe portrayed, if you've read Uncle Tom's Cabin, if you've read Harriet Beecher Stowe, you can imagine how Harriet Beecher Stowe portrayed Sojourner Truth. Yeah. And she said Sojourner Truth was dead, which Sojourner Truth wasn't. But Harriet Beecher Stowe, it was the equivalent of, let's see, it was the equivalent of a big story in the style section of the New York Times. No matter what she had said, the fact that Sojourner Truth was in a big story in the style section said, Sojourner Truth is a person of importance. So for me, Harriet Beecher Stowe was Sojourner Truth's press agent.
Not bad.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, we had a discussion about the importance of the Libyan Civil.
Yeah.
And of course, the Libyan Civil, we do know that there was a contemporary account of the speech that was given in Akron, Ohio. It's published in the Bugle.
Right, the Salem Anti-Slavery article.
And that was a verbatim article, and it had nothing to do whatsoever with the fantasy of Sojourner Truth.
Right, yeah. And it's very interesting. This, and you will find that in one of the essays in this book. But so Sojourner Truth spoke in Akron at a meeting for women's rights in 1851. And a friend of hers, Marius Robinson, who was also an abolitionist, was the designated amanuensis of the meeting. So he was writing down what everybody said, and he wrote down what she said. And the gist of it, that I have been a working woman, that working women deserve their rights, all women deserve their rights, and I am embodiment of the hardest working women who have been enslaved and who deserve their rights. So Marius Robinson got all that down, but he did something that did not suit with the American public here, and that is that he recorded what Sojourner Truth said in standard English. 12 years later, Frances Dana Gage wrote down what she said, Sojourner Truth said, in dialect. And she borrowed a scenario from Harriet Beecher Stowe in which Sojourner Truth is this powerful figure who rises up and saves the white women, and she utters a galvanizing, and the word that they both use is electrifying question. For Harriet Beecher Stowe, it was Frederick, is God dead? In which Harriet Beecher Stowe has Sojourner Truth doing something that was very popular in American life, which is a black woman putting down a black man. That is not what Frances Dana Gage did. Frances Dana Gage has Sojourner Truth saying 4 times, and aren't I a woman? So it becomes a refrain. So Frances Dana Gage is the artist in this story. And the contemporaneous account by Marius Robinson is the history.
I think I might have the last question. I wanted to first make sure, I'm guessing, Dr. Baker, you've been to the Harlem Renaissance exhibit at the Met? Or...
No, I'm going on the 27th of this month.
I was just going to say it's going to be there till the end of July, and it's an incredible recuperative effort.
I know the works, but I've never seen them in person.
And there's some great works by women, black women artists in them too.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, you mentioned how you're either writing a book when you go to Berlin, I'm losing the credit.
Yes.
About how your sanity was helped being maintained by leaving here.
Yes.
Did I hear that right?
Yes.
Could you say a few words about what enabled that to happen by being there, not here?
Yeah.
Because I know it's a thing that a lot of black artists and writers and dancers
Yes.
have done.
Yes.
I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, so I didn't grow up in the South. I didn't grow up under Jim Crow. But I still grew up in the 40s and 50s. As we said, we were born in 1942. And it was an age of segregation in California, too. There were places that we never could know if we were going to get good service, or my father had to save up the money to buy our house because he couldn't get at that point, FHA was not lending to black people in California. There was, the whole question of going to school with kids, but not being with them otherwise, and so forth. So I also grew up in a left-wing family. I knew about the South. I knew we subscribed to the Petit paper. Did you ever get that? We definitely subscribed to The Nation and Freedom Ways and so forth. So I knew. But then my first big trip abroad was junior year abroad in Bordeaux, France. And I was faced with an entirely different set of historical questions, which was, I loved history at that point. I mean, I didn't know I loved history, because, I didn't like American history at all. But in France, it was French history, and it was really interesting. That's where I became a historian. And then I spent 2 years with my family in Ghana in the 60s. We went to make the African Socialist Revolution, and then had to come home. But there, the questions were not race questions. They were development questions. They were the political economy. And it was a different history. And at first, I was kind of at sea because not realizing it, I had taken my bearings from race. That didn't work anymore. And then finally, it was intellectually very rewarding because I got to ask questions, see answers, see people answering in a really fantastically fascinating way. So it was an intellectual emancipation that became an emotional emancipation also. And also it's the reason why I am not saying nostalgic about African ancestors, because I know I'm not an African. And I know that there are many different kinds of people who are African. Yeah. So, emancipation.
So we're going to have one more question, and then time to sign some books, to buy some books, and please, you can come to the Ruggles Center afterwards to continue the conversation.
Good.
I would suggest that it's a group of short essays, but I would suggest you stream it or read it, or, Nell does the
Narration.
the narrative,
Yeah.
so it's terrific.
Yeah.
And the content is, of course, wonderful.
Thanks. And thank you all.
Wait, no, there's one more question.
Oh, one more question.
Yes, I guess you didn't hear it.
Yes.
And I'm so grateful for this event because I've heard your name, and since the murder of George Floyd, I've been, and all through COVID, although I've been a college professor, I suddenly found myself becoming an independent scholar and reading all the things. I hate American history too, but there's new histories and there's history about what's happened to black people and connecting to now. So your name is on a long list of people I wanted to read, and what a great introduction to you. I'm so excited. Here's the question I want to ask. I've been trying to find out a lot more about the impact of the fugitive slave law. And here in Northampton, we have this statue of Sojourner Truth, and we're so proud of this community that was here.
But
How was she, is it in your book about her, how she was impacted by that law?
No.
Do you know?
Sojourner Truth self-emancipated in 1856, a year before emancipation in New York State. And so she was actually on a book tour selling her book at the time that the Fugitive Slave Act was passed. And she was not an active participant in the Underground Railroad. So in the 1850s, she was on an extended book tour, and so the people she was with were people like you, people who were supportive of women's rights and Black people's rights. But I do not have, and Margaret Washington, who was the real heavyweight historian of Sojourner Truth, also does not have Sojourner Truth interacting with fugitive slaves as fugitive slaves. I mean, there were people here whom she knew, but she was not sort of out in the street protecting people. That was more of a men's job.
And she lived in a city.
There were riots in Boston and people trying to avoid complying with it.
Yes, yes.
But as yet, I have not heard that anything like that happened here and with among.
I don't know, Chris, where are you?
You for being part of this organization. I was ready to please give me thank you. We'd like to remind you, if you don't know where the Ruggles Center is, if you are driving or walking, you just take a right this way on Pine Street, a right down Maple Street, and a right on Montauk. You can see our sign out front. There is to park across the street. One's come for refreshment and work on their station.